When you think of Formula One, you immediately imagine the likes of Michael Schumacher, Ayrton Senna, Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, Alain Prost, and many other heroes of the sport. But on the other end of the spectrum, one that almost never sees the light is where the forgotten ones lie. Drivers that were criminally bad, whose lack of talent reached threatening levels. Who do you think we are talking about? Before we get properly started, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. If you enjoy our content, this will be a big help to keep the channel going. And make sure to turn on notifications so you don't miss out on the next videos. Now, enjoy the 7 levels of Haram F1 drivers and what makes them so criminally bad. Number 1. Yuji Ide. You've probably already heard Yuji Ide's name mentioned somewhere. Widely regarded as the worst driver to ever race in F1, the Japanese driver was outright banned from the sport after only 3 races. But while Ide's short-lived F1 stint was historically bad, he wasn't a terrible driver. Far from it. A fairly competent open-wheel racer back in Japan, Ide finished 3rd in the ultra-competitive Formula Nippon in 2002, losing the title by a single point to Richard Lyons. Back in his home country, Ide consistently took the fight to names like Le Mans winners André Lauderer and Benoit Trullier, and Japanese legend Satoshi Motoyama. In F1, however, he was thrown into the fire. Drafted into the new Super Aguri squad, Ide struggled from the start. Aguri infamously lined up with a pair of 4-year-old Arrows chassis that had not seen any development since early 2002. To make matters worse, Ide did not speak any English, and he had only driven about 125 miles in an F1 car prior to his first race weekend. In other words, he had spent less than a full Grand Prix behind the wheel of a Formula One car. When you put it all together, it's easy to see why he was so terrifyingly bad in F1. In his 3 starts, Ide qualified between 1 and 4 seconds behind teammate Takuma Sato, and between 4 and 7 seconds off the leading cars. Ide's highlight reel consists of multiple off-track excursions and on-board footage that is genuinely painful to watch, which include him letting go off the steering wheel mid-corner. After returning to Japan, Ide continued to score solid results, which included winning the famous Suzuka 1000 in 2010. As far as criminally bad F1 drivers go, Ide was closer to the higher end of the spectrum. Trust us, it gets a lot worse. Number 2. Andrea De Cesaris. If your nickname is a pun on the word crash, then odds are you aren't a very good driver. Andrea De Cesaris, aptly nicknamed De Crasheris, was a mainstay on the F1 grid between 1981 and 1994. That was largely because the Italian brought along some significant funding from tobacco juggernaut Marlboro, his personal sponsor. De Cesaris wasn't completely devoid of talent. He was actually quite quick, but also incredibly error-prone. The Italian holds the F1 records for the most DNFs, with 149 in 208 starts, for the highest rate of retirements, at 71.6%, and for the most consecutive DNFs, with 18 in a row. He also has the 2nd highest number of starts without a win, behind Nico Hülkenberg. One stat that perfectly exemplifies De Cesaris' career was his fascinating 1987 season. De Cesaris had 15 retirements in 16 starts. His only finish: a 3rd place at Spa, driving an underperforming Brabham across the line while running on fumes. The talent was obviously there, but he just never managed to put it all together. De Cesaris was far from being the worst pay driver in F1 history. Beware, the threat level is only increasing, and the next name on the list would make De Cesaris look like a world championship-level talent. Gaston Mazepin's talent was inversely proportional to his cash. The Argentine had a very anonymous career in F3000, scoring a mere 2 points in 19 starts, and failing to qualify on 3 occasions. With such a pure resume, F1 was caught by surprise when Minardi announced Mazepin as its 2nd driver for the 2000 season. The Argentine brought with him a substantial amount of cash, courtesy of his personal sponsor, cable network PSN. On track, he did about as well as you imagine. Driving for the worst team on the grid, Mazepin failed to score a single point. He was outqualified by teammate Marc Jean 12-5 and lost out 11-6 on the races. Following his dismal year at Minardi, Mazepin took his money to Prost for 2001. It took only 4 races for Alain Prost to lose his patience, with his criminally bad driver. Mazzacane was dropped after the San Marino Grand Prix, closing out his forgettable F1 career. After failing to make a positive impression in F1, Mazzacane returned to Argentina to compete in the top-raced V6 series and in the legendary Turismo Carretera Championship. He hasn't enjoyed much success either in nearly 2 decades of competition. Mazzacane has only scored 5 wins. It's fair to say that he wasn't the most talented driver to ever race in F1. While Mazzacane was unquestionably slow, he wasn't in the movie chicane level just yet, and he represented no danger to himself or to his fellow competitors. That, however, wasn't the case for the next name on the list. Number 4. Jean-Denis Delatraz. Can you make a terrible impression in only 3 Grand Prix starts? If you are Jean-Denis Delatraz, then the answer is yes. The Swiss driver is still remembered by F1 fans to this day, 3 decades after his short-lived F1 career. That's how bad he did on track. Delatraz followed the usual ladder in junior single-seaters, progressing from Formula Ford to Formula 3, and then to Formula 3000. After failing to do much in junior single-seaters, he decided to try his hand in sports car and touring cars, where, guess what? He also had very limited success. And then, his big chance came in 1994. With the ailing Lurus team needing a well-funded, short-term replacement to drive its second car, the team brought Delatraz in for the season finale at Adelaide. Delatraz jumped into a Formula 1 car, having been away from single-seaters for 4 years. His last time behind the wheel of an open-wheeler had been in an F3000, and the Swiss had never driven an F1 car before. Well, his debut went about as well as you can imagine. While Delatraz still managed to out-qualify Mimo Stradella, his lap was still 6 seconds slower than pole sitter Nigel Mansell, and a full 2 seconds slower than the next car up the order, 24th place David Brabham. In the race, Delatraz continued to lap 6 seconds slower than the leaders, and he became a moving chicane. After being lapped a whopping 6 times in 61 laps, Delatraz retired with a gearbox issue. He wasn't done yet. A year later, he was signed by the equally cash-strapped Pacific Racing to compete in the final 5 races. On his first start at Estoril, Delatraz qualified 12 seconds slower than pole. He continued to struggle during the race, lapping 12 seconds slower per lap. Lacking the necessary fitness levels to drive a Formula 1 car, Delatraz retired after 14 laps, dealing with cramps. He returned for one final start on the following round at the Nürburgring. The Swiss qualified nearly 10 seconds down on pole and dragged himself across the finish line 7 laps down at the checkered flag. During the race, Delatraz was caught struggling to keep the car in a straight line, once again showing that he lacked the necessary fitness to wheel a Formula 1 car around. Even with 3 races left on his contract, Delatraz was let go by Pacific after the race. Team boss Keith Wiggins was quite categorical on his assessment. He was defaulted on payment, and on ability alone, we are not prepared to keep him. Delatraz was so historically bad. His short F1 stint led to the introduction of the 107% rule. As dangerous as Delatraz was, he wasn't bad enough to get outright banned from a country. This feat, however, was achieved by the next name on the list. Number 5. Pastor Maldonado. It's hard to deny that Maldonado had some talent. He comfortably beat Sergio Perez and Jules Bianchi to the 2010 GP2 title, setting a series record for the most consecutive feature race wins along the way. But during his junior single-seater days, Maldonado had already developed a reputation for being fast and crash-prone in equal measures. His most infamous episode happened in 2005, during the Formula Renault 3.5 race at Monaco. Ignoring a red flag, Maldonado entered Massenet at full speed and ran over a track marshal. The man was seriously injured, while the Venezuelan driver received a lifetime ban from Monaco. After agreeing to pay for the track marshal's medical bills, Maldonado had his ban rescinded, bringing a substantial amount of cash with him. Maldonado joined the F1 grid in 2011 with Williams. His big moment came the following year, when the Venezuelan delivered one of the greatest drives of the decade to hold off Fernando Alonso and win the Spanish Grand Prix. But his legendary win in Spain was a blip on the radar. Maldonado was even more crash-prone in F1 than he had been in junior single-seaters, failing to finish over a third of his 95 starts. During that stint, he racked up an impressive 31 penalties. His closest competitor was Perez, who had 17 penalties during that same span. Maldonado was a fast, but very dangerous driver who often represented a threat to himself and to his competitors. However, the Venezuelan also had flashes of talent, and on his rare good days, Maldonado did look like the real deal. That certainly isn't the case of the final two names on the list. Number 6. Lance Stroll. From his first start in F1, Stroll was already a controversial figure. The son of Canadian billionaire Lawrence Stroll, Lance actually had a solid start in karting and single-seaters. While the cash certainly helped, he still flashed some talent, having been part of Ferrari's driver academy and having also won the Italian F4 championship in 2014. But once he moved up to F3, Stroll showed his true colors. As a rookie, the Canadian built up an impressive highlight reel with several crashes, from flipping his car to triggering pileups. After causing a 3-car crash at Spa, the Canadian even earned a 1-race suspension. Even with his limited experience, Stroll was fast-tracked into F1 for 2017, joining the cash-strapped Williams team. Stroll clearly lacked the fitness level to drive an F1 car, as his onboard cameras often showed the Canadian struggling and fighting the steering wheel around the track. He has since failed to improve on that early impression. Stroll is still hated by fans, who consistently point out his lack of skills compared to the rest of the grid. The Canadian has also been involved in a number of high-profile crashes, and is often labeled a threat and a danger by his rivals. While it's undeniable that Stroll would have never made it to F1 without his father's money, the Canadian has at least delivered a few interesting results, like his 3 podium finishes and his brilliant pole in the wet in Turkey in 2020. The final name on the list, and the one at the bottom of the iceberg of F1's criminally bad drivers, never showed even the smallest glimpse of talent. Number 7. Nikita Mazepin. If you asked fans back in 2021 for their most hated driver, the answers would be almost unanimous. Nikita Mazepin. The Russian driver joined F1 carrying a terrible reputation. Known for his outbursts both on and off the track, Mazepin had already been seen taking other drivers out of races, punching his competitors, and making reprehensible comments on social media. But money can always buy your way into F1. As the son of Russian oligarch Dmitry Mazepin, Nikita was announced by Haas ahead of the 2021 season. On his first laps on board the car, during preseason testing, Mazepin did his nickname justice and spun off right away. He went to spin another 23 times that season. His results were just as poor. Mazepin was outqualified 20-2 by teammate Mick Schumacher, and he was also beaten 18-4 on races. On average, he was over half a second slower than the younger Schumacher. Mazepin was dropped by Haas ahead of the 2022 season and never returned to F1. As a general nuisance and dangerous driver, with very little skill, he deservedly earns a place as the lowest level of F1 talent. And that's it for our 7 levels of Haram F1 drivers. Do you agree with our list? Would you add or remove any names from this list? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.